Good afternoon and welcome to the second series of the Health and Wellbeing Strategic Research Area. I'm pleased today to invite you to listen to Professor Kelly Niles-Yokum, who holds a chair at the University of Laverne in California. Her presentation will be focusing on one of the blue zones, Costa Rica, and will take the gerontological opportunities and challenges in a new era perspective. Kelly's teaching areas are gerontology, policy and aging, and her research interests include empowerment in later life, the lived experiences of programs and services for older adults, and end of life. Thank you very much, Kelly, and please start when you're ready.
Thank you, Dr. Marston. I'm excited to be here. Thank God for technology, right? We're in two totally different worlds here. So thank you for inviting me. When you invited me to come and talk about the Costa Rica adventure, I was very excited because we haven't been able to do much talking around it. So this is a pleasure for me. I'll give you a little bit of background. The trip actually came about in kind of a funny way. I'm very interested in age-friendly communities and the World Health Organization's work over the years in that area. And I'm interested in doing it in my area here in Southern California. I've worked with the folks at Portland State University and actually flew up there to talk to them about their experience. They were the very first and only city in the United States to apply and get the grant and the opportunity to develop the age-friendly communities in the United States. And Portland State is one of my alma maters, and my friends there were more than happy to help with that. So when I was thinking about age-friendly communities, I was introduced to the Blue Zones and started teaching about the Blue Zones in my health and later years class. And we started thinking, you know, these are connected. This age-friendly community concept and the Blue Zones research and what's going on in other countries, these are connected. And so I went to my dean and talked to my colleagues, and we decided we'd already been doing a travel course. It's Gerontology 598, which is called Comparative Gerontology, where students go. We traveled to Amsterdam and Copenhagen. We also traveled to Portland to look at what they've done there with age-friendly communities. And we thought, let's start going to the Blue Zones. Let's start thinking about these things in different ways. And so we got a group of students together. We actually got a grant to help pay for a unit of the students' travel from the Randall Lewis Foundation. And off we went. We connected directly months and months prior to our trip with Tony Buettner from the Blue Zones. And so it was in collaboration with Blue Zones and the University of Laverne and the Gerontology program that we were able to make this happen. So there's lots of ways that I can talk about this. Probably there was the process and the logistics and everything that went right and some things that went wrong. But probably the best way to talk about it is a little bit of all of that. There was the academic part, of course, and the class part of it. The travel part was about 5 days. And we went to visit with our guide there, who actually also works with the Blue Zones, who brought us into the homes of older adults, 100 years and old or older, to really learn firsthand and immerse ourselves in their lives. And instead of learning from the classroom, learning from PowerPoints, documentaries, me talking in front of them, we were able to sit with older adults who were living this life and actually being researched, and the students, watching them sit on a dirt floor in front of a woman who's 105 years old, talk about her life was life-changing for all of us. So there were interesting moments, I would say. Every evening when we got back, the students were required to sit for a debriefing. And this was, I asked them to just think about their takeaway. What was one lesson, one thing that they learned that day? They were required to keep journals. And so we've kept track of that. I have all of those. We used Blackboard also as a learning management system to help us with this. And I would say those were some really powerful moments, having all of the students sit around and talk about what they learned that day. And when we first started our journey, we were very westernized, right? Was there air conditioning in the bus? Was there enough to eat? Were there enough snacks? When are we getting, how long are we traveling? And within, I would say, 48 hours, things were happening, like the bus breaking down, getting lost, not knowing where we were, hours of travel. The students, there was a definitive shift in their perspective and respect for where we were and what we were doing. And perhaps this has prepared them for this pandemic that we're in right now. So the lessons from the Blue Zones, we took those back. We did the academic part of it, but I feel as if the lived experience of that opportunity will stay with us forever. For me, absolutely. The other ways that we collaborated with the Blue Zones was Tony Buettner came out to do a lecture, a distinguished lecture for us a few months after we got back. And that was an opportunity for the students to showcase their learnings, right? What they learned, and also get up on stage and be with Tony Buettner and have the community join us, because this is really about community. And what can we learn from other countries and other individuals and bring back to improve the quality of life in the end for older adults in our own communities. So I'm not sure what else you want to know about Costa Rica. I feel like I've been talking forever. For anybody that's not familiar with the Blue Zones, there are very specific principles and things that these Blue Zone hotspots have in common, including social connectedness. So how connected are you to your community? And sometimes that community varies, right? Sometimes the community is just your immediate neighbors and your immediate surroundings. And sometimes it's just your family, depending on where you are. But it's also this notion of the physical part of aging and how that works or doesn't work. So I think here in the United States and in westernized countries, we think about the physical part of it as working out, going to the gym, having this regimented routine, going on a diet to lose some weight, getting fit, when in fact, what we learn from the folks that are being studied in the Blue Zones is that some physical movement every day, normal physical movement, going about your day. So these folks will be tending their garden, walking to the store, moving their bodies every day in natural ways, and the way that they eat close to the land, right? So I think there's a lot to be learned. Perhaps some of these are common sense and we know these things, but to actually go in person and see the differences and the differences in the quality of life. I think coming out of some of these homes, the students were struck by the difference in socioeconomic status, because it's not about money, it's about how you live your life. It's how committed you are to living that life. And for me as a researcher, one of the things that I research is social connectedness and the things that isolation can do to us, which has been very interesting over this pandemic period that we're in right now, particularly for older adults who tend to be isolated in many ways It can be perceptually, but as a society, we tend to isolate older adults anyway. So those lessons are what we brought back with us. And what I would like to do is go to all the blue zones, right? that's my pie in the sky. I don't know how we'll do that because it's a financial issue as well. But I would love to continue bringing students to the blue zones, to Sardinia, to Japan, to all of the other places where we can learn these things and bring them back. And then as a researcher, to bring them back in ways that people can access that information in lots of different ways. Presentations like this, articles and books. But there's nothing like being there in person. And so that's my hope in terms of the future and what we can do. But then it's also about giving back. So how do we give back to those communities? Anybody who is an academic and has done this kind of community-based research, that's always the struggle. You don't want to just take, you want to give back. And so students and I spent a lot of time kind of thinking about things that we can do, whether it's, giving a donation to one of the areas that we went to where they were planting trees. And we actually did that work. Whether it's doing the work and getting your hands dirty when you're there, or continuing to be involved once you get back in meaningful ways, right? So that is my long ramble about blue zones. And I'm not sure if I've hit all those points.
Thank you, Kelly.
So I have a question.
Yes, please make me stop talking.
How did I can hear myself. Kelly, can you shut the mic, please?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm going to ask this question and then unmic yourself and then answer. How did your students, what were their perspectives on flying down to Costa Rica and experiencing one of the blue zones? And what were your own takeaway thoughts as well as the thoughts from your students? You need to unmute yourself, Kelly.
Okay, I'm sorry. My Spotify started playing Fleetwood Mac in the background and I had to figure out how to turn it off. Can you ask me your question again, Hannah? I'm so sorry. I had a technical difficulty. I didn't think we needed Fleetwood Mac in the background. Hannah.
What were the takeaway thoughts for yourself and that of your students when you were in Costa Rica, but also when you were back in Southern California? But did they differ, your thoughts, in the two time?
Yeah, so it was really one of of course our visits and our days were very important and meaningful, but gathering the students together in the evenings, we had tears and we had laughs. Everybody was so respectful, and it was a group of women. We didn't have any men, so it was very powerful in that respect too. That here was this group of women together and sharing. One of the common themes was really the students thinking about their own lives. So this became very personal for them, which is what we always hope for, right? As professors, we want students to immerse themselves in ways that mean something outside the classroom. So one of the students was talking about how she realized how much she took for granted in her own life. So a lot of this was personal and emotional in those ways. And I would say that was the common theme, was really everybody reevaluating their life and reevaluating little things like a family meal. We live such a fast-paced life. So one of the students said, I'm always just, going through the drive-through and grabbing dinner because we've all been working and the kids have been in school, and then we throw the television on and then we go to bed. And so there was lots of discussions about slowing that down. How do we slow our lives down and not be beholden to the socially constructed ways in which our days go? Get up, school, work, come home, eat, maybe not so well, or maybe well. So they were really trying to connect what they were learning with their daily lives and what they were going to bring back with their families, or in their own lives, depending on their situations. And so we started a WhatsApp group. And we had that while we were there so we could communicate in case I lost anybody or something happened. And that group still continues. We went in August, I think it was August. And so it's been a year that WhatsApp group has been going. And students started, when they got home, sharing pictures of family meals, spending time together, things that they were doing to really slow their lives down and incorporate some of the things that they learned during their very short time in Costa Rica and meeting these amazing older adults. For me as a professor, oh boy, there are lots of lessons for me, and it's hard to separate out the logistical academic lessons from content and curriculum to my own personal life, since those boundaries are so blurred oftentimes. But I would say it's the same for me. It's remembering that the work, I can put the work away for a little while, and I think it's taught me. We've had 3 trips now. Costa Rica was our 3rd trip. But the only one that was specifically dedicated to Blue Zones. And I think what it helped me to really think about was my boundaries between work and my life, my work and my personal life. Do I really need to be sitting up at 2 a.m. with my laptop and grading and writing papers and getting up and doing it again and being distracted when my family's here and working? So it's helped me change some of the ways that not only I live my life, but I do my work.
That's great. And when you were down in Costa Rica, what kind of activities did you do during the day, during the evening? What kind of people did you meet?
We had plans every day, and we had a really great guide. We had 2 guides. Jorge Vindes has been working with the Blue Zones for a very long time, and so Tony Butner and his team connected us with him, and he knows these people. These are his people, and he knows them personally. So we would visit older adults in their homes. We would visit them on their farms. We went to a home where they also run a business. They hosted us for lunch, and then they took the students out back and showed the students how to make tortillas, how to make tea. So we were showed every day. We had a lesson every day, and sometimes a few of them. A lot of driving, a lot of getting on the bus and driving. But we were in people's homes. We were eating meals with them. We spent one evening with a physician who works with whose patients are many of the Blue Zones individuals that we met with. And so the students all sat on the floor and gathered around outside his home and we sat with him for hours, and he talked about his perspectives on Western medicine versus what he's trying to do there in Costa Rica, and the differences between kind of the younger generation and these folks who are older, 100 years or older, and how they don't necessarily need to go to the doctor and don't want the medications and don't need the medications. And he sees a difference, things kind of changing. So we had scholars, we had a physician, we had the individuals, and then they had academic assignments that they had to complete every day, including their journals, and then a final project when they got back, which is a comparative project, kind of bringing home those lessons and picking a community, their own communities, and how they would incorporate those changes. So every day we had a schedule. We did have a little fun. We went zip lining, which also, there were lessons there too. We had students who were terrified, but they did it, and the whole group encouraged them and said, you can do it. So one of my students, through her tears, did the 15 platforms of zip lining. And I think those things, while they may seem fun and not part of it, it was definitely, there were some connections about facing your fears and thinking about challenges and overcoming them. So we packed a lot in 5 days.
That sounds fascinating and exciting. I have 3 final questions. My first question is, what are the pros and cons of your research, your discipline of work?
Pros and cons. Well, it's aging, right? I think the pros and cons of my work and the research. So I would say in my area of research and work with aging, is like many of us commiserate about, I would say one of the pros is just how we think about aging, or don't think about it, or deny it. A lot of what we do, I feel like, is combating the ways that people think about aging. It's kind of demystifying and debunking the stereotypes of aging, the socially constructed notions of what it is to be old. And so, I would say in terms of the cons, it's combating those narratives that we have about old age. The pros are, I really think it is a new era. And as odd as it sounds, I do feel like this pandemic has ripped the Band-Aid off, this hidden notion of aging and what it is to be aging, and that it's so separate from everything else, and it's not. And so the pros are, I would say, kind of what's happening right now, but also working with my students. The Costa Rica experience, for example, watching these students immerse themselves and really get it and understand it. The research part of it, the pros and cons, I would say, are the same. I'd really like to see more research funded that allows us to look at the lived experience of aging, instead of just, the ways that we think about it currently. We do that on our own, but I would really like to see some more funding, and more funding for students who are doing gerontological work.
That's great, thank you. My second question is, what has been your biggest challenge or challenges throughout your research to date?
Oh, biggest challenge. So I would say trying to do it without any money. Yeah, I have a few research projects going on right now. In the research that I'm trying to do that's related to the aging networks, and that lived experience of programs and services and the fragmentation, the biggest challenge is getting funding for it, but also getting others to recognize that it's important, including my colleagues, including my own university. but also it's reaching older adults. So, beyond just sending a survey out to a self-selected group of people, how do you reach those individuals who aren't even accessing programs and services? We know that older adults who get Meals on Wheels or go to the senior center, it's maybe 5%, right? I haven't looked at the numbers lately, but I'm interested in the lived experience of that, of what it is to age. And if I'm only reaching those folks who are already accessing services and getting support, I'm missing so much. So I would say it's as odd as it sounds, access to older adults. How do we find them? Beyond putting a survey in a Meals on Wheels bag and accessing that person. So I would say, as a researcher, it's trying to access the population that I'm interested in too.
That's great, thank you. And my final question is, what improvements would you like to see in your research or discipline?
Oh, well, I would love to see just some acknowledgement that aging matters. I mean, I would love to have gerontology and aging studies be normalized, be a part of the curriculum, whether it's infusing it across other disciplines at the undergrad level, the community college, at the graduate level. I'd love to see it not be sidelined and a peripheral part of something. So I've run several gerontology programs in different states. I'm at the University of Laverne right now, and they just closed my gerontology program. It's supposedly on a hiatus, but we're trying to figure out ways to incorporate it in our public administration program, in our health administration program. So again, it's an example of gerontology just dripping into a part of something else and not being on its own, which I'll take it, right? As a gerontologist, I have a PhD in gerontology. It's what I do. But so many programs closing, I at a time when this is a new era. So we talk about that a lot as gerontologists in my discipline and in my field. I would like to see more support from our associations. I would like to see more support from our administration if we're at colleges and universities. I would love help for all of us to promote and recruit for our programs, because that just doesn't happen, not in the ways that it does for other disciplines. And I think it stems from people not understanding or knowing it, or also not understanding the value of being gerontologically educated and how much we need that. I have, stood in front of people till I'm blue in the face, and people either get it or they don't. And so as an educator, I feel like it's my duty and my students' duty, those who have graduated from my programs, to continue to advocate not only for older adults, but to advocate for the field, for the discipline. And to watch it kind of going away is very disheartening and very sad for me. If we need to incorporate it into other programs and disciplines, so be it. But I feel we do that in addition to having our standalone programs, or we lose part of our identity. So that's the challenge in my mind. Maybe that was a lot of challenges.
That's great, thank you. Before we finish up, do you have anything more to say? Would you like to add any more on the basis of blue zones in Costa Rica?
I would just say, one thing that we've been talking about, particularly you and I, is thinking about the blue zones and the age-friendly communities in different ways. And so I think that we learn so much from going outside of our own communities. We learn, from going to different countries. We live in a global society, so the opportunities, my title is, it is a new era. And I really feel like this is a time for us to I don't think reinvent ourselves, but really advocate for ourselves as gerontologists and as educators, and as people who love what we do, to really strike while the iron is hot. And I think there's a lot going on right now. And if there's any time for us to promote and advocate for our field, it's now. And so let's cross our fingers for more Blue Zones travel and for, getting more students passionate about the field of aging.
For sure, definitely. Well, thank you very much. And I'm just about to stop recording.